The Buffalo Bills have drafted 9 new players to the roster in this year's NFL draft. We are going to go over every player and the draft class as a whole. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Bills defensive end Greg Rousseau, and you're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circling the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, let's go Buffalo. Hey, let's go Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna shout.
What is up, Bills Mafia? Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo fan base podcast. I am your host, Nate, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. This is an exciting weekend. The draft weekend is one of our favorite weekends. Again, it's the weekend where we get all the fun new toys and we get to discuss all of them. If we liked them, if we didn't, if we were okay with them, things that we liked that Brandon Beane and the organization did over the draft weekend, things that we thought they might have done, but they didn't do, and vice versa. It's going to be a lot of fun discussions. I'm joined by my co-host John for this episode. John, man, we love the draft. We've been talking about it for months now, it feels like, and the Bills have 9 new players. How are you feeling in general, and how much did you love this draft? We can get right into it. Your thoughts on this draft class, man?
Feeling really good. It's funny, like going into the draft, I'm feeling a lot better coming out of the draft than I was going into the draft. Not because of was where they might pick, just because it was like, another year of picking really down low in the 30s because they're so good and everything. They're not going to get a top 10 player. So it's like, yeah, there's all these great players, and like they're not going to get those ones, but they can get these ones. But I did really enjoy this draft a lot coming out of it. I think they got a lot of value out of all the picks, and they filled a lot of needs. And not only that, they double or triple dipped on some needs, and that made me extremely happy, especially on the defense. I thought they should have gone defense the other way, and that's pretty much what they did. Super happy about it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, John. It's funny how, we've been talking about the draft needs ever since the needs for the team in general, ever since the end of the season, and where we come up with our big board of needs, and we're going to discuss. I'll show you the slide in a second. You're right. I mean, they double dipped at 2 of the biggest needs that we had pointed out, and then a lot of other needs right after that into like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th areas. So they hit on a lot of different players. They traded up a few times to get some of these players, and we're going to discuss it. Plus, it's also worth mentioning that the players that we discussed heading into the draft, some of these players we did not mention at all. A lot of them we didn't, and that's because I think it's worth mentioning why we have different thoughts than what Brandon Beane and the Bills organization do when it comes to the draft, or at least their team and what they want for their players. So I think this is going to be an interesting discussion a lot. It's going to be, what did we like, what didn't we like, or what were we surprised by, more or less. So that's going to be fun. So let's go over the picks real quick for those that don't have them all written down or memorized by now. First round was cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. The second round was defensive tackle TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. Third round pick was Landon Jackson, the defensive end out of Arkansas. Fourth round pick was the defensive tackle out of Kentucky, Deion Walker. Fifth round pick, the first 5th round pick was cornerback Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. The second 5th round pick was tight end Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech. The first 6th round pick was cornerback Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech. The second 6th round pick was Chase Lunt, the tackle out of UConn. And the last pick in the draft, for the 7th round pick for the Buffalo Bills, was wide receiver Caden Prater out of Maryland. So lots of fun things to discuss, John. real quick, these were the needs that we came up with. If you've been following us or watching us or listening to us, this has been our needs all along. Sometimes maybe one of them shifted, but for the most part, it's stayed steady. As you can see, cornerback, right now we have 2, possibly 3. So they hit the first need that we had on the roster. And I say 2 question mark because it could be 3 depending on how you view um, the 5th round pick, Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. 2 defensive tackles the Bills got in this draft, which was our second need. Our third need was defensive end. They took that in the 3rd round, oddly enough. Almost perfect. They literally went cornerback, defensive tackle, or defensive end, our order in the picks of the draft. Our 4th need was safety, and they may have gotten that potentially. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And our 5th need was wide receiver, and they got one of those late in the draft too. We also had running back, punter, linebacker, kick returner as our last needs. But again, when we're looking at these needs, we're kind of also taking into account how important they are to the team in general. So running back, John, I'll mention this real quick off the bat. We probably won't talk about it again. Brandon Beane mentioned he feels very, very confident about James Cook, which leads me to believe why they didn't draft a running back. We thought that they might, depending on maybe a day 3 pick, but it sounds like they feel very confident. If you think about it, they had the same running back room, with James Cook in it as they did last season. And that's one of the best running back rooms that they've ever had on the roster. They re-signed Ty Johnson. So it's Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, and of course, James Cook. So I'm happy with that group. I don't think they needed to, but if they saw a guy maybe that could also do kick return duties or special teams, I was okay with that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They must be real confident that James Cook will play this season. I can see why they might feel that way. I think I don't want to speculate, but Delvin Cook, obviously is an influence on James, but I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure if Cook will hold out. I'm a little bit more optimistic now. Obviously, I don't think they're going to re-sign him either way after this next year, and I'm not entirely sure if they should, but I'm a little bit more optimistic that he will play this year.
Me too.
But we'll see.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, where this goes. But I mean, it sounds like it's all going in the right direction for now. So we'll assume it is until we hear anything different. If we know, for sure that it's not, then that'll be a whole podcast onto itself. I feel like over in that area. But yeah, it's again, I think we're in a good spot. Let's start off with the top. I did a quick reaction podcast. By the way, if you guys are watching this live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever that is, feel free to give your thoughts on these prospects as well. And we'll add them to the show as much as we can to get those discussions in. But let's start off with the top. John, the Bills did draft a cornerback like we had hoped. We didn't talk a ton about Max Hairston. I didn't think that they might go for him just because he's a little bit shorter. He's a speedy guy. He's not an excellent tackler, but he's a willing tackler. But the guy's got speed for days. He's an athletic freak. He ran a 4.28 40, and it's been a long time since the Bills have had even a 4.3, personnel cornerback or safety or whatever on, the defense run that fast, even as a player. So it's been a long time. John, I was kind of surprised at this pick because Trey Amos was still on the board. I thought they might go Trey Amos. All the defensive tackles, it felt like, were off the board at that point that I was considering in the first round. So I'm not surprised they went cornerback, but I was a little surprised they went with Maxwell Harrison. John, what did you think when you saw the pick? Were you happy with it?
Yeah, I was definitely excited. I was on the Amos train as well. Also, Emanwari was there, which was a prospect that I liked. but you're absolutely right. They need speed on both sides of the ball, and he kind of fit the bill there. I'm not upset at the pick. Like, I mean, it'd be like a BB plus for me. Like, I might have picked somebody else, but I think he's still a great prospect. And you look at some of the other mocks and some what other people are saying, and he might have been a little bit higher in the first round in some people's minds. So I'm excited to see what he does. He's obviously going to start across from Bedford no matter what, I think.
Mhm. He might have gone higher if he didn't have that shoulder injury in 2024, and being mentioned that he's not worried about that whatsoever. So, I mean, he's a zone heavy corner who also has a lot of experience in man coverage, which, I mean, if you're listening to like a lot of talking heads, it sounds like the Bills want to be able to do that with their corners. They don't want them to just be zone only, which is kind of, the
Right.
prospects that you and I were looking at were more zone guys, and Max, because he's got that great speed where he can make up for it just in case he has a misstep. I mean, he kind of fits that perfectly. So if you're looking for a guy that can continue with, Xavier Worthy or, whatever, I mean, this is an exciting time. This could be potentially with Trey White and Dean Jackson and, the guys that we'll talk about later that they drafted. This could be the best cornerback room the Bills have ever had if it ends up panning out. Because so I'm excited about this pick in general. I was glad they took a corner. I wasn't as
Yeah.
high on Hairston, but I mean, everyone, it's so funny because you'll see like average, there was not one Maxwell Hairston mock draft that I could find that showed the Bills picking him. So it just goes to show you that like everyone kind of talks about their own, big boards and stuff like that. And they all kind of meld together into one big, big board. But obviously every team has a different big board than, what the general mock draft community does.
Actually did see a couple with Harrison, but I kind of poo-pooed it. But you're right, he's great in zone. Obviously, we said we've talked. He's fast. I do think he's got really good instincts, and I think that's going to help him a lot. If they call on him to, man versus zone and this and that and playbook wise, I'm very optimistic with him. Yeah, it wasn't one of my first thoughts, but I think that he could fit in well. And you look at like it's from like a culture standpoint. Like, did you see like is like every in the green room, like he was like, I guess he was like one of the rooms closest to the stage. So like every guy that was picked in front of him, like every single time he's like high-fiving them, being super positive and congratulatory. And then and I'm sure you saw the videos like once he gets to Buffalo and going, all that stuff. He seems like a guy that would fit really well in with Buffalo, and that's exciting too.
Yeah, I mean, personality for days, man. Like this guy is funny. I mentioned this on the live podcast I did like right after on Friday morning as I was driving to work, and said that like he's kind of reminds me of Keon in the fact that he is like a really fun personality. Now they're completely different like personalities, but they're both kind of contagious. Like they you like them. You gravitate towards those guys. And he was a captain in Kentucky too, so he has those leadership skills. And I did love that he dapped up all those players as they were going through. I showed a montage on our social media accounts. If you haven't checked that out, please do. Alex Bransky was retweeting it, so I shared it as well. And it was just he seems like a super likable guy. There was that incident, which was brought up by someone on day 2, was like, hey, what do you think about these? There was some assault, sexual assault, not charges, but like allegations against him. And Brandon Beane basically said they do their due diligence, and they said no reason that they have to think that was gonna go anywhere, or that it had any, anything that could potentially harm his career or like be brought up criminally. So for right now, sounds like it's not a Matt Araiza incident. So so happy about that. Hopefully it's not an issue, but yeah. Yeah. So X Griff said, I mentioned, it showed earlier, Daniel Jeremiah's draft had Hairston going before pick 30, which, Daniel Jeremiah is super plugged in. So he must have known that was like, he might have been the guy that the Bills were trying to trade up for, when the Bills were calling the Steelers. So we'll see. Peter Nana says Kuiper had Hairston to Buffalo. I didn't because he wasn't getting that far to me. I think people assume he's all speed, but he's plenty more. He was all SEC the past 2 years, even being hurt in 2024. And being all SEC is, no short order, especially when you're playing, Kentucky. It's not like he's playing for Alabama. So love that Peter and Gift said that. But yeah, I'm happy with it. I think one of his weaknesses is, he's a little bit smaller, but they said that he's gained about 6 pounds since the combine. So he's at like 192. He's 5'11", 192. And, he has to work on his tackling. But again, it's not that he's not a willing tackler. He's just not as good at it as the Bills usually like their corners to be. So I think it's just something they're going to have to work on, technique and stuff. Luckily, the Bills do a great job at coaching up their DBs. So I'm excited for this.
A good point about the tackling. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, John, that's what I'm here for, buddy. We just we assist each other. You shoot it up and I dunk it. That's how we work. So, second round pick, John. I was a little surprised at this when the Bills. I was thinking defensive tackle in the second round. The Bills were trading up. Initially, my thought, and I guess this kind of differs again with our changes in what we think the Bills need versus what Brandon Beane thinks the Bills need, or at least what he's willing to draft this early. And when I was looking at defensive tackles, I was looking at guys that were big enough to play the one tech, but then also, provide some sort of pass rush on passing downs. So that's why I was looking at guys like Kenneth Grant, guys like Derek Harmon, not so much the Walter Nolans and TJ Sanders of the group, because these are guys that were sub 300. They're more pass rush, 3 technique defensive tackles. And what Brandon Beane basically said at the press conference, John, is that they traded up. They wanted TJ Sanders. He's 6'4", which is huge. I mean, still compared to Ed Oliver, he's 3 inches taller than him. 290 pounds, which is roughly where Ed is, and he's a great pass rush guy. I mean, the guy gets pressure on the quarterback. He's one of the best in college football at that. He had a pass rush win rate of 12.6%, like almost elite, like almost upper echelon of the defensive tackles. And when asked about it, Brandon Beane says he could play 1 tech, but he could also play 3 tech. He said he could get up to like 305, 310, he feels, and still, be able to do what he needs to do pass rush wise. But I like this pick, John. I was just kind of surprised that it wasn't like an Alfred Collins, more of like a 1 tech big dude that could also do a little pass rush also. Instead, they went with a guy that does pass rush but can also stop the run and maybe could play a little 1 tech in the future. What'd you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is a guy that they really liked, and that's what they traded up for him. I think that versatility. I think it helps that they got Deanne Walker in the 4th for that rotation. And it's really interesting if you look at their defensive tackle roster at this point. They got, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Dwayne Carter, Larry Ogunjobi, TJ Sanders, Deanne Walker. Like, they got a lot of guys there all of a sudden. It's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. But I think the rotation is the key. And they got you guys, I think Deanne Walker is going to be key. If he's healthy, that rotation is going to be really good.
Yeah, for sure. I like this pick a lot more because there was a Deanne Walker pick later, and I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, this for what it seems like right now, and the way that Brandon Beane was assessing that is like, we need pass rush. Like, we need guys that can affect the pass on definite passing downs. Because right now, who are they putting in on pass rushing downs? Is it Daquan Jones, who's now, 32 or something like that?
I think
I mean,
he's
he's
like
just not the same player.
34.
What is he 34?
I think he's older. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, he was never a pass rush specialist to begin with. Sure, he showed some flashes at times, but that was never really his game. So I think what they're doing right now is they're going to start off TJ Sanders alongside of Ed Oliver on passing downs. And then they kind of, work him in to see how does he do on obvious rundowns. Like maybe when he just mixes in the defensive tackle rotation, maybe Ed needs a break or Dwayne Carter needs a break and TJ comes in, or, they have a lot of ammo now at the defensive tackle position to do that, because it's funny. It feels like they still have a lot of 3-tech penetrating defensive tackles on their roster. And they do, because I think Dwayne Carter, even though Brandon Beane said at the press conference, Dwayne Carter is more of like he could play one technique too. I don't know. He's kind of built in the same mold as Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders. He's not like a huge guy, a little bit bigger maybe, but I think that's kind of been his style. That was his style at Duke. And in Ogunjobi, the free agent that they signed, is still more of a 3-tech as well. But Brandon Beane says that these guys can switch into 1-tech if they need to, but I think it's still Daquan and maybe Deion, Walker, which we'll talk about later. But TJ Sanders, at least I think in the immediate form, he's a pass rush specialist, I feel like. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think part of that is like, look at what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl against Mahomes. They not only they shut down, well they shut him down. they shut down the whole team. The defensive line they wreaked havoc on them. So you need to have all that versatility on edge and tackle. That kind of might lead into our 3rd-round pick here with Landon Jackson.
Yeah, let's go on to Landon Jackson. I was thinking and kind of hoping that they were going to be looking at pass rush at some point in this draft. Obviously you want it sooner rather than later, right? Like who doesn't? But this was something that I saw Landon Jackson. I thought this might be a guy. I was kind of curious what type of pass rusher were they going to go for? Were they going to go for, maybe a smaller, 6'3", 240, 250-pound guy that, had a lot of speed, had a lot of pass rush versatility, or, what they ended up going with, which was another really long guy, 6'7", 280 pounds, defensive end Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, 22 years old. Super. The adjective that they kept talking about when it came to Landon Jackson was violent. That was his behavior. It was like violence, the way that he attacked the passer. Great run defender, really good pass rush win rate. In his last season at Arkansas, he had 7 sacks, 20 hurries. He has a lot of different pass rush moves. He's not just a one pass rush move sort of guy, and he's actually not very bendy, but like he's more bendy than I think people give him credit for, especially for how tall he is. So, John, I was thinking about this too. It's interesting with TJ Sanders. Now you have Landon Jackson. I think they want these tall guys to kind of just clog up passing lanes. If you can't get to the quarterback, especially in TJ Sanders' instance, like get your hands up there, man. Like knock down those passes by Patrick Mahomes, especially if they're trying to get the ball out early on you. Like stick up those paws, man. Give him as much issues as you can, and these guys could do. I mean, you're talking about Landon Jackson. I mean, I haven't gone over the RAS scores, the relative athletic scores. Here, let me share that with you guys. So this is the first 3 draft picks for the Buffalo Bills. Maxwell Hairston, 9.63 out of 10 relative athletic score. The only thing that's not, his height is only 5'11", so it's about average. It's okay, I guess, but his weight was very low. I mean, but other than that, I mean, you're looking at his vertical was, everything was over 9, basically. The vertical, the broad jump, the 40-yard dash, obviously 4.28 is almost a 10. 20-yard split was really high. And then his 10-yard split was, an 8.73. So like really, really athletic guy. And then the same thing with TJ Sanders. He had a 9.38 out of 10. His agility grades weren't great, but they were still good. And he's not super heavy. So again, that's really
Wait,
the
Weight
go
for
ahead.
the weight. Do they is this like measured at combine?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
so like these guys purposely sometimes cut for the combine so they can improve in speed and other things, and then they put the weight back on after, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So like these ones sometimes get updated with pro days if they have one. But I mean, look at Landon Jackson. He's a 9.78 out of 10 with his. I mean, his 6'6". I mean that's well above. That's 9.67. I mean, then he had a great 40-yard dash, 4.68. He had one of the best vertical jumps of 40.5. I think they were the best of all defensive ends at that level. And yeah, I mean, he's an athletic. I mean, that's a good thing to have, and that's obviously one of the things that Brandon Beane was looking at with these guys. So this is we're going to get to that get into wide receivers in a little bit, but yeah, I thought that was really cool, John. Landon Jackson seems like a guy that could hopefully be that pass rusher that we get on certain downs that could provide them. I mean, some people have compared him to Carl Nassib or Max Crosby, which, sign me up, right? For a guy like this, mind you, this was a deep defensive tackle group. So this is a guy that might normally go in the second round potentially. Long arms, great tackling radius. He does have an injury history that had 2 ACLs, one from high school and one early in college when he was at LSU before he transferred to Arkansas. He has things in his. I'm just hoping that the Bills can develop him into what they wanted or hoped Von Miller would be, because they've taken a lot of swings at defensive ends. And if you think about it, John, even defensive tackles, really, like, they haven't hit on one. Like, they've gotten good ones. They've gotten Greg Rousseau. I think he's good. Ed Oliver is good. But they haven't gotten any great ones yet, as many swings as they've taken on the defensive line. So hopefully, I'm hoping between Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, we'll talk about Deion Walker next, but I'm hoping that they finally hit on one of those guys.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why like they double dipped or triple dipped onto these positions. Like they did it with when they drafted Kyrie Elam, they took Christian Dunford, and look, one of them worked out. So that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, exactly. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Well, yeah.
And if you don't take any of them, if you don't try to take an offensive tackle, I mean, this is the most that they've invested in the position, like, in one draft. So I'm stoked that they went this way. Buff Enough says on Twitter, an X, love the Jackson pick, had a late first round grade on him. And a lot of people were expecting, I think, a second round pick on him at the latest, and he just ended up being there for Buffalo. So I think there was a run on defensive ends, and they were moving on to other positions when that happened. So, which is great, because, while teams are running on quarterbacks, running backs, in this case, wide receivers, because the Bills didn't take one early, I think this was good. I'm glad you mentioned earlier, John. I wanted to bring this up because Buff Enough said earlier, why is Beane allergic to speedy, deep threat wide receiver? And I think this is a good talking point, John, because one thing that we mentioned with Max Hairston, and just in general with this team, is they do lack some speed, like real speed. Like, they have guys that are kind of fast. Like Khalil Shakir had like a 4.46, I think, which isn't bad, but it's not great. You know what I mean? It's not like elite speed. This was the first draft where it feels like they would try to get someone with speed, not just like a tall guy like Landon Jackson, or a guy like Deion Walker, right? Like a big guy, because they've gotten big guys before. They got Greg Rousseau, 6'7", 260. They've gotten big guys. They just haven't gotten any fast guys. So that was really cool to see. But John, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, need more speed on both sides of the ball. Obviously, they addressed defense with Harrison on that. I don't think this draft in particular was that great with speed at receivers. The guys that were fast, I wasn't too enamored with. And sometimes the draft doesn't work out like you have your tiers and the guys in your tiers disappear, and it's like, okay, so out of the 5 guys left in my tier at this spot, none of them are receivers, so I'm going to take this guy. Sometimes it works out that way. I do think that going heavy on defense in this draft was the right way to go, so I'm happy with that.
Brandon Beane essentially said at the press conferences after day 3, when all was said and done, they're like, oh, you only used 3 picks on the offense out of 9. And, people are going to say, why didn't you get a wide receiver? He's like, well, people are always going to say no matter what draft, you didn't get all the needs that you had. And he's like, that's going to happen every year. He's like, if there was a better issue where you could, or the better way that you could have everyone get to you, then you would do that. If you could get a wide receiver, he's like, if we had the best wide receiver up there and it was available in the draft, like, we would have taken him. And I believe him when he says that. It just didn't happen. I don't think that they placed him that high on their board. So John, I want to, this is kind of a treat, really. We're able to have one of the best beat reporters out there. You've heard him on the Buffalo Fanbase channel. He's on, I believe it's 95.1. I can't remember exactly, but we have Mookie Hawkins from the beat. Mookie, it is so good to talk with you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Out the war room. So draft is officially over. What do you think?
So this is what we're going over. We're going over pick by pick, Mookie, but I was good with it. As far as the Bills' needs, we had defensive tackle, cornerback, defensive end, all these needs that they kind of hit on and even double dipped in some of them. We were just mentioning wide receiver. I kind of wish the Bills had gotten one of them, but John, our co-host, was just mentioning, like, there wasn't a ton of speedy guys that, maybe you would have taken in the first few rounds, or it wasn't that big of a need, maybe a day 3 guy. But overall, I liked it. What did you think as far as, the needs of the team and how they addressed it? Were you happy with it, or do you think that they accomplished that?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed, with what they did. I mean, obviously, it was a defensive drive for the Bills. Obviously, the biggest concern, with this Bills team, obviously, was on the defensive side. When you look at the Bills offensively, I mean, they are top 5 dead or alive in just about any statistical category when it comes to that. Not having, I guess, if you will, like the speedy receiver or whatever the case may be. But the issue wasn't the offense at all. The problem is the defense. You can't get nobody off the field on 3rd down. You can't get the quarterback on the ground on 3rd down. So the Bills made sure they went out and got those specific pieces. I mean, I know everybody at first was kind of scratching their head at the TJ Sanders pick in the 2nd round. A lot of people probably felt that he would have been there at pick 56, but the method of Beane's madness was to, okay, we got to get a 3rd round pick. So who is high on their board at that specific time to move up for, so they can obtain a 3rd round pick? I think, what they were able to do as far as, trading up twice, I think they did a wonderful job on strategically, putting that out, because they went and got one of the top pass rushing defensive tackles in this year's draft. I know everybody was looking more of the big girthy guy, more of a one tech. The Bills went back and doubled down on D tackle again, getting Deion Walker. And, so that kind of like balanced out the line. So once you get a Landon Jackson, once you get a Max Harrison, the fastest player in the combine, let alone the fastest corner, you get one of the best pass rushing D tackles, and you get, a stud in Landon Jackson in the 3rd round. Those are all 3 A's in my book. So I think the Bills were spot on, with getting those guys, and I think it's going to make, immediate impact in that defensive line rotation.
Peter Nana brings up in the comments, he said they brought in some speedy receivers for visits. We're giving up north of 33 points per game in playoff elimination games since 2020. And that's kind of to your point, Mookie, was just this is where the Bills are coming up short every single postseason. It's not Josh Allen just, blew it completely. It's the Bills defense is just even if when they were healthy this last season, it wasn't enough to stop that. Of course, Christian Benford going out in the first quarter didn't help. But again, they had to rely on Kaiir Elam. They don't want to do that. They want to hopefully, if things go south and a player gets injured, rely more on a Trey White as opposed to a Kaiir Elam. And I think that they did a good job of addressing that. And they're tired of just letting guys like Lamar Jackson and other quarterbacks just sit back there for sometimes it feels like 7-8 seconds before a guy even gets close to him where he has to make a decision to run. I think that was one of the frustrating things in the season is just the lack of pass rush. Now, hopefully, I see TJ Sanders as kind of like an early or a passing down, defensive tackle to start the season, and maybe he morphs into more. But is that kind of where you see him starting the season and lining up next to Ed Oliver for those obvious pass rushing downs?
Well, a strong suit is a 3-tech, but he can play one. It depends on the certain situations and personnel groupings that the Bills want to put out there. He could be a 3-tech while Dwayne Carter is playing the 1. He can be, a pass rushing D tackle with Ed Oliver on third down. It's just so many combinations that, you can move these guys around to make plays. And he's a young guy too. So you figure, with what they have up front right now, they have some younger guys that's definitely can peel their ears back on third down and go get the quarterback. Pressures isn't good enough. You got to be able to get the quarterback on the ground in this business. And it just seems like come playoff time, the Bills are always easily exposed on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads us into the 4th round pick, another trade up for the Buffalo Bills to get another Kentucky player, Deion Walker out of Kentucky, 6'6", 345 pounds, another young guy, only 21 years old, just turned 21 in March, super young. Again, a guy that's like on paper has size, athleticism, had a really down year this last year with some back issues. Brandon Beane mentioned in the press conference, Mookie, that he thinks that he could play today if they needed him to, but or at least practice. But they're glad that they get the spring with him in training camp to really build up those back issues that he was having, because in 2023 he had a great season. 2024 not so great, probably why he slid down to the 4th round. But when you look at this, some people were saying he was more of a 3-tech defensive tackle as well, but the guy's just ginormous, right? Another thing that the middle of the Bills defense in general is just not that big. Defensive tackle, they're not that big. Linebackers are not that big, and safeties they're not that big. So this guy adds a huge size dimension. I think it makes me like the TJ Sanders pick even more. What did you think about that? And do you like that one?
Yeah, when they went and I kind of suggested it to Max when he got drafted. Do they go back and grab Walker? Because, a big guy like that is definitely in need here. So, ironically, that happened. But again, they got the biggest D tackle just about other than the kid from Florida, in this year's draft. And Deion Walker, 6'7", 335 pounds, definitely is going to demand a double team. Definitely can keep Ed Oliver in one-on-one situations as well as the edge rushers. So you get a big mammoth space eater of a guy in Walker there. And if the Bills can develop him the way I know that Mark West developed D lineman, then, that's going to be another steal come the 4th round once healthy. So I like the pick. It really balanced out our defensive front. Because for the past couple of years, a lot of people were just saying the Bills are small up front, and that would pretty much prompted, some of the things that they were saying against the playoff game against Baltimore, how everybody was saying, the Bills, they just too little, they too small, stuff like that. So, you balance it out now with a guy that's 6'7", 340. Everybody, is probably following that Philadelphia Eagles model, with the big 2 stout interiors on defense. So 6'7", 335, I kind of like that.
Yeah, me too. I
With a
really like
motor.
that pick. I'm glad they went up for him. Yeah.
With a motor, that's key. So I like that. And just to answer the receiver question, I know everybody wants the speedy guy, but guess what? We got Curtis Samuel that runs a 4.3. When you really look at why the Bills really didn't dress receiver early on, at some point maybe the guy that they coveted was off the board. So you have to go best available player. Um, you know how it is with those receivers. If it's ain't a Matthew Golden or somebody of that caliber, um, they wasn't probably thinking about, going up and getting an offensive guy. Year 2 for Keon, I think is detrimental, not only for him, but is the offense. So they have to, he has to, it's high expectations for Keon Coleman coming into year 2. Joshua Palmer is obviously a Amari Cooper replacement. And Curtis Samuel showed towards the end of the season, when healthy, his playmaking ability. So as long as these guys can stay healthy, they got pieces already, that's in the building. They just got to stay healthy and, work on getting more familiar and continuity going in the offensive structure. Bring James Cook back. And, the offense is a well-oiled machine. It's just that on the defensive side, I feel that, the Bills are probably, if they need to make a trade because the receiving core ain't getting it done like how it was after week 4 of last year, then, possibly a Keenan Allen. You probably go get you a serviceable veteran, in the wide receiver core at a bargain price.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up the offense because Brandon B did mention that at the press conference that he didn't walk away from the 2024 seasons thinking the offense was the problem. It's funny him saying that because then he's clearly saying that the defense is the problem by saying that. But he did mention, I'm glad you said Curtis Samuel. I think a lot of, Bills Mafia, including myself at times, completely forgot or maybe wrote him off when really he was injured right before the season with that turf toe injury, and it clearly affected him. Now, did it affect him throughout the entire season, or was there a chemistry issue? Who knows? But there's a lot of play, and he can play slot, he can play outside. I mean, there's a lot of versatility in his game. So, I'm looking forward to him being there. Like you said, 4.3 speed. Like the Bills do have speed on that roster. Sometimes it just didn't show up as much last season. So we're going to go to the next pick, Mookie. Jordan Hancock, cornerback out of Ohio State, picked in the 5th round. Sounds like he could play either safety or corner, or nickel corner rather. He's 6'1", 195 pounds. I was kind of hoping, I'll be honest, like I don't mind this pick. It sounds kind of like Cam Lewis, where Cam Lewis kind of moonlights at, backup nickel and safety. Maybe he's an upgrade over him, or maybe he competes with him for a position. I was kind of hoping, if I'm looking strictly at safety, Mookie, I'm looking at a guy who can be a ball hawk, a guy like Micah Hyde. We haven't had a Micah Hyde since Micah Hyde, and that's kind of what I was looking for. What do you think of this pick? Do you think it's just, special teams, defensive back depth, or where do you see Jordan on this team?
Oh, it's definitely special teams, defensive back depth, but I want to see what it looked like at him at safety. Me personally, I'm just not sold at safety. A lot of people is really not, taking safety serious on, obviously we've been spoiled. When you have Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde for 7-8 years back there, you kind of get spoiled. And last year that pretty much wasn't the case. Tyler Rapp, solid, but, he's not available, when you're not playing in the AFC Championship game. That hurt. And, you kind of put a rookie in Cole Bishop out there who clearly has not understand the magnitude or the intensity of that level of type of game right there. So I just think that safety is still a need. Derek Forrest is definitely a special teams rotational guy in certain packages, maybe. You got Damar Hamlin, who's more of a run stopping safety. He's not a cover guy. Don't have the speed to cover. So yeah, maybe the Bills say Justin Simmons. Maybe Justin Simmons want to come and bring his price down and play with a contending team, on his way out. Who knows? So I'm just figuring that safety is still a need, but I definitely would like to see what Jordan Hancock look at safety. Definitely has, the measurables 4.4, 8 speed there. Definitely has great ball skills. They could play a big nickel and safety, as you mentioned there. So, I think that was a nice pick as well. I gave Hancock a B grade.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see that, in 2024, he played 94 snaps at the box, in the box safety, and 200 deep safety. So he has played that deep safety role, which is kind of what, I think I'm looking for in safety. I know that you mentioned, Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp. They seem more of like those Jordan Poyer, like, in the box safeties. And not that Cole Bishop's athletic as hell. He just hasn't put it together, like you said. And he wasn't asked to do a lot of deep safety, stuff at Utah. So it's just not that he can't do it. He just hasn't really had a chance to do it yet.
He's best in the box. He's just
He's
best
best.
in the box. Like he's just best. Let's not try to make him into something that he's not. Keep him to his strong suits and work on his weaknesses to make those a strength. So I would just keep him in the box. Rap, he's a little bit more versatile, obviously, but he's a box safety, I feel, as well. Hancock, again, with the 4.48 speed, can cover some ground, very rangy and physical. So, and it don't hurt when you win a national championship. So you can play against the highest competition that you can play in a collegiate level. So that's going to definitely breed some confidence coming into camp.
Yeah, definitely, John. I feel bad. We've kind of been pretending like you're not here, man. I've been stopping to ask you questions.
Yeah, you
John,
can't hog me, man. You gotta let my man shoot some questions, man.
I'm just not used to this, man. I'm not used to having you on, Mookie. I got to take advantage of it. Well, he'll understand later. Don't worry. We'll have a discussion about it. He'll be okay with it. But no, John, man, what did you think about this pick? I know we kind of brazed over Deion Walker. Thoughts on this one? Did you like the pick?
Yeah, you guys said all this things I was thinking. I'm like keep nodding my head over here. No, I think he's versatile and he can play special teams as well. If he can work his way into safety, that'd be great. They do have a ton of cornerback depth now, so looking up and down, you got Terrence Johnson, Benford, Hairston, White. Dane Jackson might be the odd man out.
Yeah, Mookie, what do you think about that? Because we were talking about this pre-recording, and is this? I mean, with them taking, we haven't even mentioned Dorian Strong yet, and I hate to say that a 6th rounder would make it over Dane Jackson, but does that make him at all expendable, or is it's way too early to even assume that Dane Jackson would not make the roster because he's a vet?
Yeah, it's way too early to assume that. I mean, first of all, he was a starter in the scheme. I'm not sure how much Babbage has tweaked. Well, I'm quite sure Babbage. I've known they've tweaked it quite a bit for what it is, but the terminology is still the same for the most part. So it's nothing that Dane can't pick up on. Schematic wise, it's just probably a tad bit different because the Bills are going to play a little bit of man now. That explains why you go ahead and get the fastest corner in the draft because the Bills do intend to play some man. You can't afford to be slow playing off man press. Teams is going to just do stand-ups and bubbles and slants and stuff like that and outrun you. So the Bills are definitely going to mix it up a little bit this year because now they have some speed on the back end where they could be a little bit more versatile and flexible when it comes to scheme. So you can do a lot of zone blitzing. Now you have the rush. Hopefully you have enough rush and to balance with the coverage and to produce some sacks in the time of need with the pieces that they brought in over the weekend.
Yeah, if I don't want to get too ahead of myself, Mookie, but if Brandon Beane hits on this draft with the defensive lineman and the secondary pieces he's put together, could you see the Bills' defense being like the Eagles' defense in the Super Bowl, where they just can stop people? I mean, is that asking way too much? Because none of these guys have proven anything. But if he hits on half of these guys, I mean, there's a potential here for a defense that we've never seen before.
Right. I mean, the Bills were in the AFC Championship game last year, so only difference is one game. And you need defense. That's why they say defense wins championships. Because you need the necessary pieces and the necessary situations to make the plays. So again, if these guys are coming in making an impact, especially when playoff time come and these guys are, the reason why, then yeah, you got to give Breen his flowers in the scouting department on, identifying what to bring in to get this team to the Super Bowl. So, a lot of quality depth and cornerback. You still got Jamarcus Ingram there. So it's going to be interesting to see competition for corner number 2 because you got Tre'Davious White there. You got Dane Jackson. I thought maybe Bean would probably be a little bit more comfortable going somewhere else at pick 30, maybe to take Emmanuel. But again, that's a non-premium position for the Bills at 30. But I'm thinking more or less maybe that was best available player. But again, you cannot teach speed. Had to go get that 4.28, and I don't blame him. So it's going to be interesting to see the competition at the corner 2 spot between Tre'Davious, Mad Max, and Dane Jackson. Then you figure Jamarcus is going to be backing up, Benford over there. You have competition now with Hancock and Cam Lewis. Cam Lewis, the Swiss Army knife, that can play all 3 positions, play a little safety. So that's why I say I want to see the opportunities that Hancock get at safety if the Bills don't decide to bring another one in. I just think right now that's still a position that the Bills need to fill. Other than that, I think the Bills have quality depth pieces just about everywhere else. Maybe you can bring in another linebacker, but if you wasn't going to do it in the draft, I don't think it's going to happen in free agency. So they're going to trust the guys that they have on the roster for now. But yeah, I do believe that safety is the only position right now that I feel that the Bills is not done at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe
receiver,
receiver, but I just think you gotta invest a little bit more in Keon Coleman going into year 2. You gotta, get Samuel involved going into year 2. You can't just be paying these guys this type of money and just giving them 1 or 2 targets. Like, everybody can't eat when the game is on the line. So, Coach Brady is going to have to figure that one out. Like, identify who's having a hot hand in that game and go with your best plays with that player to win it if it matters, if the game is on the line. Everybody just can't eat. They got to come up with a better plan, in those type of situations. But everybody can't eat. To have James Cook on the sideline in that situation that's criminal right there. I just didn't understand that. That's a question that I forgot to ask them about, but I just didn't understand that sequence there. When the game was on the line, your best player at that moment in that game was James Cook, and he wasn't out there to make a difference for the team. So I need to see that change for sure. And I'm quite sure James is going to play this year with a chip on his shoulder because of it.
Yeah, I hope so. This is so weird, Mookie, because I know we're kind of going off with that in the AFC Championship game, but some of their personnel decisions late in the game when the season, the Super Bowl is on the line has been kind of questionable. I'm thinking about Kaiir Elam. I get why he started, but when they saw him struggling as much as they did, I'm not sure why Jamarcus Ingram wasn't in there, just to someone different, because he was clearly struggling. Maybe even Cam Lewis, a playing corner out there, I would have felt more comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Same with the year before that. I know Dorian Williams was a rookie, but they put in a hobbled AJ Klein out there. And I'm like, man, just let the kid give it a shot. It might, it's easy to say that now that they didn't win, but it's like, man, I liked Dorian Williams a lot. He showed flashes. Just let the guy. And then last year he looked good. So there's some other personnel decisions. Sometimes they can't get out of their own way with coaching, and they play very conservative when it happens, or when it comes down to that, which I get why they do it, but unfortunately I think it's come to bite them.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, well, we don't have a Super Bowl ring, so yeah, that definitely. So the next pick, guys, is Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech, the second, 5th round pick for the Buffalo Bills, 6'5", 260 pounds, definitely a blocking tight end, only had 20 targets last year in Georgia Tech. Definitely not a receiving threat, but this is a guy that they look to bring in possibly, on blocking downs. Mookie, I was talking with John about this before we were recording. Maybe is this a guy that you see maybe just taking that third tight end role, or could he potentially be like, when they bring in Alec Anderson for a 6 offensive lineman? Could Jackson Hawes be that guy, or would he be that guy in addition to an Alec Anderson or 6 offensive lineman?
I asked Brandon Bean that yesterday because my guy, the GOAT, Mark Gahn from the Buffalo News, he always have all the data, all the info. So I was wondering. I said, "Hey, Mark, how many times did the Bills go with the 6-0 line offensive lineman? 145 snaps. Alec Anderson reported eligible.
Wow.
All right, so that's 14% of the Bills' offensive snaps. All right, the NFL average for that is 5%. The Bills were 14%. So, yeah, I did ask Brandon, is it a possibility because Hawes is slotted to be one of the top blocking tight ends in this draft class? Is it possible for him to, snatch some of them snaps in that personnel group? And because teams know when he's out there reporting eligible, he's not going out for a pass. So, you got to have a guy out there that could pose a threat as a receiver as well to, make that linebacker think, or that safety to think that guy can go out and catch a pass. So, we can't be too predictable in certain situations of these formations neither, a la 4th and 5, right? So, he has ways to go being mentioned, but definitely like to pick. But we'll see. We'll definitely see. That's definitely a question. I definitely asked Bean, but John, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think he's a great blocking tight end, and I think that will fill that spot for the Bills. Obviously, they have Dawson Knox and Kincaid. He's not going to overtake those guys, but as much as like Zach Davidson, I think he's going to definitely play a role.
Yeah, you got competition at tight end 3. So, this is going to be a competitive roster. There's definitely going to be some competition battles come training camp. So, look at cornerback number 2, key position. You got to look at the competition up front now at D-line, like who's really going to crack that rotation from edger to interior, right? Look at the competition battle between Ebenezer, Landon Jackson, and Javon Solomon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how what that rotation is going to be like. Who's going to get more snaps in that specific role of being a pass rusher or whatever the case. So it's a lot of competition that's going on. Even at linebacker, with Dorian Williams, and you have to say Matt Milano at this point. Dorian Williams led the team in tackles.
Yep.
So you can't like just have him sitting on the bench this year. You know what I mean? So something definitely is going to give with that, very soon. And I would like to see how the Bills are going to work that rotation with that 3-headed monster, because you just can't put him on the bench. He's been very serviceable since a rookie. Obvious last year coming in, he was leading the league at one point in tackles. Milano comes back, he just goes right back to the bench. So like something like that, I just feel that, he's played majority of the season, man. He should be able to be in there in some situations and certain packages, he's going into his 3rd year. It's no way that he sits the bench. I'm quite sure it's going to be some sort of package for him to be out there. And, you got to keep Milano healthy too, So it's not the most durable at this point in time of his career. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how that 3-headed monster work in the linebacking core. But other than that, yeah, it's competition all across the board.
Yeah, one thing I was happy about, Mookie, was as the season went on, especially in the postseason, they did find packages in that Ravens game to put Dorian Williams on the field, knowing that they needed to shut down Derrick Henry. So I was glad they found a way. But, as of right now, he's basically the guy that's going to replace Matt Milano if Matt Milano ends up leaving after his contract is done next season, right? He is the replacement linebacker for Milano.
Dorian's going into this is his third year, so he'll have one more year after this. So Milano contract will be up, so it is definitely evaluation time after this season on what they're going to do with Dorian. Are they going to extend him? And, obviously, Milano, what they do with that. Do they bring him back for, a lower deal or whatever the case? We'll see. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do that three-headed monster at linebacker, because Dorian Williams definitely needs to play. I mean, he was the only one that really was running up on Derrick Henry, so man, he needs to be out there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So the next pick for the Buffalo Bills in the 6th round, cornerback Dorian Strong, the third cornerback that they took in the draft, a guy that I thought was going to go a lot sooner. 6'1", 185 pounds, 23 years old, out of Virginia Tech. Not the biggest guy, but oddly enough, he's kind of strong. He has some strength in press coverage and run defense. Smart guy, competitive guy. He's a guy that I think gives him a little bit more length at that position. But what are your thoughts, Mookie? And then I'll get to you, John, about where he was drafted. Did you like the pick, and where do you kind of see him? I know these guys are hopefully all special teamers, but do you see him as more of an outside quarterback or nickel?
Yeah,
or
he's
what?
an outside. We asked Brandon. He's an outside guy. We asked him, what is his style of play, and he said he loves press man. 6'1", 195 pounds. Father is a bodybuilder. So, I mean, the last name is pretty much what it is, right? So, you got a nice, strong, physical cornerback that could run. He can contribute on special teams. So again, like, it's this competition for Jamarcus at that 4th corner spot, right? So it's going to be pretty interesting to see. You does a lot count out Daquan Hardy from last year, so it's going to be some definite competition with these corners that the Bills brought in. But Hancock definitely nickel and safety. You won't see him on the outside. So you look at your outside guys. You got Maxwell, you got Strong in this year's draft. You got Ingram, who can play on the outside. You have Dane Jackson, who can play on the outside, and Tre'Davious White. So you got 6 corners right now on your roster that can play on the outside. Your inside guys is what? Cam Lewis, Taron Johnson. Right now you got Hancock and who else can be on the inside? Probably another guy, but Hardy. And I think they had Hardy. Right?
Oh yeah, geez, I almost forgot about Daquan Hardy.
So Hardy. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I like how the roster is shaping up. And again, Bean is still trying to make it one competitive roster, to a training camp. So I like the Dorian Strong pick, a big physical corner, rangy, with the speed to match, and don't mind running downhill and supporting the run. And, he definitely can contribute on special teams. This is where these guys is going to make the roster. Can they contribute on special teams? So, the getting out there is that 4th, 5th corner, but can you contribute on special teams? So that's definitely going to be something to watch out for. I think that Strong has the makeup to definitely make the roster.
Yeah, John, I was a fan of this pick. What did you think? I know we talked about double dipping at corner, and they kind of triple dipped with this one. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, when they drafted him, I was surprised he was still there. I thought he was already taken. So I was happy with it. You guys mentioned special teams. He's got versatility there. Just like Hancock can play some special teams and all over the defensive backfield. I know Strong's more a bit outside, but definitely, like you said, lots of competition at corner. And then lost the competition defensive line this year, and I think that's great. I think it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, he has a forced incompletion rate above 13% in all 5 years, which is really good. I mean, good ball skills for Dorian Strong. I mean, this is I'm a fan of this pick. I mean, the more guys, like you mentioned, Mookie, the more guys they have on the outside to compete, the better, obviously. So we'll see where this all lands up, but at least an immediate special teams contributor. And I think, maybe that goes into Chase Lunt, the tackle out of UConn. The Bills took with their second 6th round pick, 6'8", 305 pounds, a little bit older. He's going to be 25 or so by the time the season starts. But then again, you're taking a guy that with day 3, right? Like we're not talking about all these guys as starters immediately. It's just maybe we'll see. They're almost dart throws at this point. But a guy that has really good blocking grades, more of a better run blocker than pass blocker. I mean, I mentioned the tight end, Jackson Hawes with maybe being, the 6th offensive lineman. Maybe this is a guy that, Chase Lunt comes in because maybe he's not athletic enough to play tackle, but he's also 6'8", 305 pounds. So maybe you put him in there. Again, we'll see what happens. The Bills love these really tall tackles like Spencer Brown, Tommy Doyle to plug in there and see what happens. But what were your thoughts on the pick, Mookie?
Another pick that I like. Again, he fits the mold. The Bills, they like those trees at tackle. So, they go get those guys, with the length. Chase Lung, he could play inside. It was mentioned that, he's going to dabble a little bit inside as well, just to get a feel. The Bills love those intangible players. But this offensive line is loaded at tackle. I mean, we just look at, they took Clayton and Grable. Grable was quite the find in the 7th round. I think he's going to be a hell of a replacement, when the time comes, So, to go out and get Chase Lund, I think this is just a Tommy Doyle makeup, because Tommy Doyle will still be on this roster from wasn't for injury. So, this is that right there. But let's make no mistake about it. This Bills offensive line is as deep as it's ever been, as good as it's ever been. And, they continue to add pieces such as Chase Lung. He played at UConn with Ryan Vandermark there. COVID, baby. That's why they are 25. They got that extra year due to COVID. So you see UConn, Coach Mora, NFL bloodlines and pedigree. So I like the pick. Very reliable. Durable, 45 out of 46 games. He only missed 1 game throughout his whole career at UConn. So I definitely like that pick in the 6th round. Bills definitely was just eyeing best available player after after day 2. Being came out and said that whatever's on their board as far as best football player, they're going to get. And I think Chase Long was definitely a solid pick right there.
I know you mentioned Ryan Vandermark. Does Chase have a potential to take over Vandermark's spot? Because I think right now, at least right now on paper, Vandermark's kind of that swing tackle for the Buffalo Bills. I think it was when Spencer Brown missed a game, he filled in admirably for. I think it was a Chiefs game where Vandermark came in. This doesn't put his position at all in jeopardy, right? Like this is just that deep of a position, right?
This is deep. I mean, this is a project for Coach Cromer. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing else. The Bills always grabbed them a lineman somewhere late in the draft. And then, 9 times out of 10, they get snatched by somebody else, trying to hide them on the practice squad. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that that's not the case when it's dealing with Chase.
Yeah.
The offensive line is super deep. I mean, when you look at the second unit, that's a task. Like you said, you got Vandermark that can play every position. You got Grable over there, and then when you look at the interiors, you got Van Pran, and you got your guards too. So it's kind of, man, that second unit ain't no slouch. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see where the battle lies in the second unit. The first unit is done. The second unit is definitely where the competition is gonna be heated.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's going to be something we'll be watching in training camp. John, thoughts on Chase Lunt and anything that we might not have touched on?
I love it, and I totally agree that offensive line is their best depth position, which is crazy to think about during the drought, where they had so many misses and heartaches in that area.
Oh yeah,
but no, it's great, and I love it, and keep adding to it.
Speaking of which, last time the Bills drafted a Hairston was Chris Hairston out of Clemson, and I thought he was going to be our next left tackle. So it just goes to show you, we don't know what these draft picks are going to end up like, but we're going to get to the last draft pick of the 2025 Buffalo Bills draft. We're talking with Mookie Hawkins here and my co-host John. Caden Prater out of Maryland Terrapins. huge guy, 6'3", 210 pounds, huge body, not super fast. Obviously, if he was, he'd probably go a little bit higher. Um, More of, I mean, I think he just definitely starts off as a special teamer at this point, which is where he played, some in Maryland as well. But again, more of a project guy, maybe like a Tyrell Shaver sort of guy that the Bills, try to build into something. But they had a position where you mentioned how Brandon Beane said he does best available, but he also mentioned that he does it, where a guy could actually make the roster. They don't just add like 10 quarterbacks because they know that a quarterback's not going to make it. So, what did you think about this pick, Mookie? Did you like it? What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, that was cool. I mean, everybody was wanting them to take a receiver. I was high on Savion Williams, but he went early. Then I had him graded, so that was pretty much off the board. Prater, I like the size, 6'3". Not getting any Smurfs. I know everybody is still feel like Xavier Worthy should have been a Bill, but that just wasn't what the Bills' ideal makeup was at receiver. No more Smurfs. Just no more Smurfs. The only Smurfs going to be on the team is Khalil Shakur and Curtis Samuel. Go and get you some taller receivers. Your quarterback is 6'5". It's easier to see another 6'5" or 6'3" target 40, 50 yards down the field than somebody you can't see. Just take it all the way back to when the Bills lost to Kansas City here at home on that last possession, where we obviously seen Stephon Diggs wide open on a crosser. We obviously seen Dalton Kincaid wide open on the very next play. But when you got Deontay Hardy, who's a speed burner, was on the outside, and he's being trailed by a 6'2" corner, maybe Josh couldn't see him to even make that type of throw. So again, you got to look at those situations too. So go get Josh some taller targets so that he can easily see downfield. Go get a taller guy with some speed. That's what I would suggest, right? Get a taller guy with some speed. You got that in Palmer. Prather is not the speediest of guys, 4.4, 4.5 guy. But he's a good route runner, transferred out of West Virginia. So, he definitely, can make some plays for this team. Obviously, we all know being drafted in the 7th round, you're going to have to do it on special teams. So he definitely get his chance come preseason to showcase his talents, offensively. But again, this wide receiver class, his room is deep right now at 11, 12 guys. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see where Prather, has a shot in making this roster. So, how many receivers did the Bills keep last year? 6?
I can't remember. I want to say it was, I think it was 6. Ended up being,
6, then you get a couple on the practice squad. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Let's not forget KJ Hamler still on the squad. Let's not forget Laviska Shenault is still on this roster. Let's not forget.
I mentioned Tyrell Shavers earlier too. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to fill in that Mac Hollins role or something.
All right, somebody got to fill into that role. I just think that Keon Coleman gets more into some of those plays that were Mac plays. I think majority of those go to Keon because we need to see. This is the year we need to see Keon Coleman involved. Definitely a talent. I think that, him and Josh, they got to get the chemistry going. Now is the time. He need to get that chemistry going. Him and Samuel. Shakur, we already know what time it is with him, but Josh needs to get the chemistry going, obviously with Palmer, but we need to see more continuity and chemistry going on with Samuel and, Coleman, more of your playmakers and game breakers.
I saw a podcast where Keon was just recently on, and he mentioned how much different his game was after the injury, and you could kind of tell. I think that injury really set him back for that season because I think he was doing well going into that, and I think it set him back. So I'm with you, Mookie. I'm excited to see what Keon can bring, and I think that hopefully he does take over those touchdowns and passes that Mac Hollins kind of took in that season, and probably one of the reasons why the Bills felt okay letting Mac Hollins go and not re-signing him because of what they were expecting with Keon. John, what thoughts on the Caden Prather pick? And then anything else you want to say about the wide receiver room in general?
No, I think it was a great value, especially in the 7th round. He'll play special teams and compete for a receiver spot. I like Coleman a lot. I think he's a good candidate to rebound this year, especially considering the injury. Same thing with Curtis Samuel. I know we mentioned it earlier. He had the injury really early on, and he's started to come on, it seemed like, later in the season. I think that's why they're more comfortable with the receiver room, because of those guys maybe potentially coming back next year. And then obviously they signed Josh Palmer also. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this was a good draft overall. I think, if you want to end it on this, Mookie, you started to give some grades for some players. If you were to grade the overall draft for the Buffalo Bills in 2025, where they moved up, where they moved back, the trades that they did, and the players they picked up, what letter would you give this one?
Let's see, 9 draft picks. I gave out 4 A's, 3 B's, and 2 C's.
Mm-hmm.
I gave out. Overall grade, I say B plus. B plus. I think the Bills were spot on with the first 4 picks. I do believe those 4 picks can come in and be an immediate impact, on defense right away. So I gave those first 4 picks definitely A's. I gave Sanders the A plus because of the pass rushing ability. That's what they're looking for at D tackle. They need a pass rushing defensive tackle. Then, they went out and got the big run stuffer with the high motor and Deion Walker. So I like the first 4 picks. That set the tone, with this Bills draft class. So, yeah, I give them overall grade of B. I like how being strategically used the twos to move up to go get his D tackle, his pass rushing guy. And then I liked how he was able to use 2 picks, picking a 4th and a 5th to move up in the 4th to go ahead and get Deion and still get, still had 9 picks, at the end of the day. So I thought the Bills moved around quite well during this draft.
Yeah, I think that's a good grade. John, before I give mine, what's your grade if you were to give one on this draft?
Well, I'm going to give him an A.
Yeah, you also think they're going 16-0 or 17-0 every season too. But what was your? Was there anything you didn't like then?
No, I was, for the most part, I really liked it. Harrison might not have been my first pick. I did like Amos and Imawari there, but I can see why they picked Harrison. But I mean, it's tough when you get down into the 30s. Like,
yeah, but Amos kind of slid, so I wonder why he
slid. He did. Yeah.
Everybody, feel that the Bills should take him because of the exact scheme fits, but 4.28 is totally different from 4.48.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going with the 4.28 guy that can play press man and can play off man as well. So, I mean, he's wearing Rasul Douglas' number. So, I mean, he definitely give me those type of vibes. We just have to see where his tackling is.
Yep, I agree.
Mookie, if Max Hairston isn't injured in 2024, doesn't have that shoulder issue, do you think he goes earlier in the first round if he has a normal 2023 season in 2024?
A possibility. I mean, he still went in the first round. So, with the shoulder, with the injury, if the injury red flagged him to where he still slid, late first round. I mean, I don't think a lot of teams probably even had a first round grade on him, even with the 4.28. And you look at it, how many corners really went in the first round? Barron, Johnson slid because of the knee. He got flagged for the knee. So really too many corners that really went in the first round.
No.
You got Travis Hunter, Barron, and And,
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it, really. So, and not too many corners really went, and where we thought that a lot of corners would go, then they start coming off the board into a second round, the usual.
Mhm.
But I mean, even Azariah Thomas, where he slid out of the, out of
Third round,
the,
right?
out of the second round. A lot of people thought that it was really going to be a crazy run on corners, in the second round, and that really wasn't the case neither. So, I like the pick. I just it's going to be something different to see the Bills have a speedy ass cornerback now. I mean, it's going to be something different when you see a guy just breaking on footballs and taking it back to the house, because he loves to take it. He loves to take it back to the crib where he lives. So running 4.28, I want to see how many teams is going to try him, at 4.28, in the air, So that's something that I'm really excited to see, knowing that Christian Benford now is on the opposite side of that. So teams are really going to have to pick their poison. Do they want to mess around with the speedster over here, or they want to mess around with, a future All-Pro and Christian Benford? But hopefully that pass rush will get to the quarterback's ass this time, and, we won't have to worry about that. Let the front sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the good things, I mean, one way you help the pass rush, man, is give them good coverage, so that the quarterback has to wait back there a few more seconds for it. No, I like the pick. I was happy when they picked him. I didn't have them going that high, but then again, we're not GMs.
When you in the conference of the Cheetah and Waddle, now we got the speed that can take that. When you got to go to a Super Bowl, when you got to go through Kansas City, we got a guy that can run with Worthy. If we so happens to come across Cincinnati, we got a guy that can run with Chase. You know what I mean? So now we have a guy. We have two guys right now that, man, can easily, be a nice duo in the league. So Christian Benford is already making his name for himself, and he got the bag. Now we got a speedy corner on the other side that's confident as shit. And, now if we could just get some rush going, it could be a different story, with this Bills team. And hopefully, that's a good antidote on getting over the hump, when the season starts.
Yeah, one thing I want to bring up real quick is that, I'm glad you mentioned the pass rush, because it reminded me that, Greg Rousseau has been pass rushing from one side because Von Miller always took the other side. Now I think they kind of have flexibility to put Greg Rousseau on his more natural pass rushing side, which I think is the left side. Can't really remember. So maybe Joey Bosa does the other side. So that might help the pass rush in general, just to let Greg Rousseau kind of, let him run free on the side that he prefers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, real quick, I'm going to end on this, Mookie, and by the way, thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been a treat to talk with you. Last question. With the picks that the Bills have, we mentioned Hairston a ton, speed kills. We talked about, TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, we're talking about Deon Walker, the first four picks. The way that these picks, it's not been the way that they've drafted in the past. I mean, they've never drafted a guy as big as Deon Walker. They've always been like the guy that I can't remember his name. They picked him out of Stanford, the third round pick in Josh Allen's draft, the defensive tackle.
Harry?
No,
Harry Phillips?
Oh, yeah, Harry. Yes. Harrison Phillips. Thank you. Like, they've never drafted a defensive tackle this big, and they've never drafted a cornerback this fast. Is this Bobby Babbich's stamp on this defense with the players that he wants, or is it more of this is the way that Brandon Beane wants to construct the roster? Just both.
I think it's both. I just think it's Brandon Beane getting the feel for the type of players that Bobby Babich needs to make his scheme, to make his scheme work. And, it's just a good match. The scouting department, I think the Bills have one of the best scouting departments around, the way they go out and sort players out in their gems. Not only are they gems, they're 4th, 5th, 6th round gems. You can't say how many organizations have that consistency in the meat and potato rounds like the Buffalo Bills. Haven't been quite spot on in the first and second rounds.
No.
But, this right here may change that narrative.
Cross my fingers, man. Mookie, where can people find all your great work and everything you do?
Well, first and foremost, they can always find me right here, BFBN. I am on the Buffalo Fan Base Network. That lineup will definitely be coming, out pretty soon. We got some great new exciting shows. We're gonna get a few Bills to come on as well. But you always can check me on WUFL Sports. That's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Mars, Venus, Uranus, you name it.
Nice. John, any final thoughts before we end this one, man?
Go Bills.
Yeah, the same here, man. Thank you guys all for listening, subscribing, paying attention. Had almost 3,000 viewers just for this live stream that we've been doing for the last hour with Mookie. Thank you guys all for being a part of this show, all the comments that we didn't get a chance to read out loud, but thank you guys for being active in that section. For me, Nate, go Bills. It's an exciting time to be a Bills fan. Lots of new things, lots of things going on. Spring OTAs coming up soon.
Schedule
2 weeks. Schedule
14th.
Release. Yeah, that's
You're having a party,
too.
right? Who's having the schedule release party?
You'll be right here, Mookie. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Go Bills.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter @CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.